Can you eat mushrooms raw? Well, technically you could if you really wanted to, but should you eat them raw? Probably not. Now, I've heard a number of professional health advocates say that you can eat mushrooms raw. Some people say that you always should eat mushrooms raw, and the only caution that they've included into that recommendation is that prior to eating the mushrooms, you should prepare them in, maybe lemon juice or vinegar, or dress them in olive oil or something like that, so that you can get some antibacterial and antimicrobial properties that, can kill any pathogenic organisms or any mycotoxins or molds or anything like that may be present. And quite frankly, well, although that is a good recommendation, it is nowhere near sufficient in order to render those mushrooms actually digestible and beneficial for human consumption. And I've even heard certain people say that chaga mushroom, a tough, fibrous and wood-like sclerotia, can be eaten raw and that all of its medicinal benefits are fully available in its raw state.
Good luck with that.
Mushrooms are a really good example of a type of food that is best eaten without any kind of dietary ideology involved. And in order to understand why this is the case, I think it's a good idea to just take a slightly closer look at what mushrooms are made out of. Now, mushroom cells are called hyphae, or hypha, if you're referring to just one of them. And they multiply in a branched formation, which we call mycelium. And of course, these hyphae constitute the cells of the mushroom fruiting bodies as well. Now, the main structural component within the cell walls of these hyphae is chitin, which is a very tough type of polysaccharide that is completely indigestible to humans. So to give you an idea exactly how indigestible chitin is, it's actually the main substance found inside the shells of crabs and lobsters, and it's also the hard exoskeletons that we find in many insects like beetles. So when we eat mushrooms raw, we're introducing chitin to the digestive tract, and generally speaking, one of two things is likely to happen. It's either going to pass right the way through the digestive tract and out the other end completely unaltered, or maybe if we have quite sensitive digestion, we may have some form of allergic reaction that takes place. And obviously, the large part of all of the nutrients and beneficial constituents are contained within the chitinous cell walls of the hyphae. So any kind of nutritional or medicinal benefit that we're aiming at receiving is also going to be lost. But when we cook mushrooms, the heat begins to break down the chitin, and it not only makes it infinitely more digestible, but it allows it to provide any of these benefits that we're hoping to receive. And it's also not at all uncommon that a lot of popular mushrooms have absorbed some quite toxic substances throughout their life cycle. Now, if you're wild harvesting mushrooms, you always want to make sure that you're not picking them next to the roadside, you're not picking them next to areas of industry, you're not picking them close by to airports and things like this, because obviously mushrooms are great environmentalists. They're really cleaning up the environment, they're cleaning up the mess that people make, and they're very, very good at absorbing a lot of radiation, absorbing a lot of heavy metals, and just things that are very, very toxic in the amounts that we are leaching out into the environment. So mushrooms are very good at absorbing all of this stuff and cleaning up the environment. But then obviously if we pick and eat those mushrooms, we're going to be consuming some of that crap as well. So we always want to make sure that we're picking from as pristine a location as possible. And then what's more common is that people are just going to buy their mushrooms. And we need to bear in mind here the importance of organic, because if mushrooms are being grown non-organically, they're very likely to have high concentrations of petrochemicals and other stuff in them that we really don't want to be consuming. So organic is very, very important. Agaricus Bisporus, also known as the common button mushroom. Now this is pretty much the most common edible mushroom in the world, and it's the one that is most frequently eaten raw. But it's important to know that it contains chemical compounds, just as do many other mushrooms, chemical compounds called hydrazines that are known to have carcinogenic properties. Properties which are largely destroyed through the cooking process. So although there may not be very concentrated amounts of hydrazines per mushroom, when we're eating these things raw over the long term, they are going to accumulate within the body. So, it's a nice ideology that mushrooms like this can be eaten raw, but unfortunately it's just not sensible practice. Another popular edible is Pleurotus austriatus, or the oyster mushroom. Now this is mildly poisonous, enough to actually make you feel pretty damn ill if you eat it raw. But if you cook it, it is totally safe to consume, and it's actually very delicious when cooked. So obviously the duration and the method of cooking is going to vary quite a lot from one mushroom to another, but I think a good general guideline would be that the softer, fleshier mushrooms are going to require less cooking, and the tougher, more woody polypore mushrooms, for example, they're going to require much more of an intensive cooking process. I think that saying substances like chaga mushroom are edible and that we can eat them raw, unfortunately, I think the main directive behind information like that is purely marketing, really. The percentage of known mushroom species that are edible is actually pretty small, and there's quite a few poisonous ones and even some deadly ones in there. Now, I'm not going to get into that right now, but I just think it's important that if you're going to consume mushrooms, you want to make sure that you're preparing them properly, because so many mushrooms can have profound life-enhancing benefits, but these benefits must be unlocked if we are to gain access to them.